Greetings and welcome to the Marginally Geeky Show. I'm your host for the evening, Eugene Stevens. Tonight I am joined by Jennifer and Chris. How are y'all doing?
Hi, I'm here.
Hello. I'm good. How are you?
All right. You okay there, Jen?
I'm here.
Okay.
Trying to keep up with life.
That is my standard answer at work. People will say, "How are you today?" And I'm like, "I'm here." Take it for what it's worth.
My coworkers will ask me, "Hey, are you here till the end of the day or whatever?" Because we have to have, coverage. And I'm like, unfortunately, that's my go-to answer.
I understand that. It's been a little while since we've talked, at least on this show. January we had a double episode because we had our awesome interview with Dennis E. Taylor. So it's been a little while since we've reconvened on this show. Traditionally, we do a romance or relationship type book about this time of year, for being February. So even though by the time you listen to this it'll be March, this is technically our February book. So and this year we opted to read How to Make Anyone Fall in Love with You by Leo Loundis, I think is how you say it. Anyway, Jennifer, would you like to explain why we're reading this book?
Sure. So I suggested this book because my therapist suggested it for me probably almost a year ago. And we talked about this, I guess, at the beginning or middle of January. So that's how long it had been since I got it. And I thought, well, this will actually push me to finish reading it, because I had read half of it and slowly would read a few pages. And it's not that it's like a complicated book to get through. It's actually a pretty quick read, but it's just the topic and the things that are said in the book make it really hard for me to want to read it. And we'll get into that, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, the premise was she wasn't assigning this to me so much as like, hey, you need help, to find someone or a way to get someone to fall in love with you. It was more just like, this book was written kind of to give people pointers as to things they can do. And a lot of the stuff doesn't apply to you, but you might be able to find some good, information in it. And I just kind of take issue with the idea that I have to make someone fall in love with me. That kind of, to me, is the opposite of what you want to happen when you're trying to find love. So you should just not have to force it. So anyways, yeah, that's why we picked this book, because I suggested it and then they were crazy enough to agree.
Well, I mean, I'm open for a lot of different things, and I mean, when I heard the title, I was like, okay, I was kind of coming at this from all right, let's scientifically, digest this and see and it's interesting that the book does bring up, it does have some scientific fact in it, so it's like, oh, you can't just totally dismiss it. It does have some factual information. The problem is the factual information is back from 1996. So it's been a little while since since this book was originally published. And you can tell that in the author's attitudes and opinions about male and female roles, as it were, which is, well, let's go ahead and start the conversation. So, I'll just jump in. I read this. Of course, I listened to it. I listened to it at double speed. It only takes about 3 or 4 hours to rip through. I've done it twice. It's very comical at some points. I mean, if I took it seriously, I'd be pissed. But I'm just like, whatever. It's like listening to my grandmother give me advice on dating or something. Yeah. And that's kind of how I took it. I was just like, yeah, okay, Grandma. I know that's how it was. So
okay, boomer.
Yeah, exactly. Overall,
okay, and the book is only 25 years old. I mean, you wouldn't think what could happen in 25 years, but think about the cultural changes that have taken place. Just the internet, cell phones, like a lot of things like that have changed. So none of that.
Women being the primary breadwinner in families, homosexual marriage being legal. There is a ton of stuff that has changed. Yeah. So.
Yeah, when I started reading, I listened to it too. So Leo has she reads it like she loves it. And she's very enthusiastic about her work, which is nice. Good for her. Yeah, you got a book published. I took it, the more I was listening to it, I'm like, okay, I have to take this as tongue-in-cheek, because and it was also because of the way she was reading it was really hard to take seriously.
Yes,
I'm like I can't with your like, now let's go into this. And you're
she's reading it like you're having a conversation with her.
Yeah.
Like she's sitting down. Ladies, let's sit down and talk about like that's how she's reading it, and it's just
I need y'all
like
to play me an excerpt of this.
But she's reading it as if she's smiling the whole time. So
yes.
If she's having a conversation, that chick is on some stuff, because nobody can be that like
excited.
She wasn't even excited. It was just like she was stoned or something.
She seemed pretty excited.
Yeah, I was like, woo. I started taking it as sort of like a satire. Like, this isn't a relationship book. Don't read this to figure out how to have. This is just sort of, okay, I'm dating, or I'm trying to. What the hell am I missing?
Honestly, it felt to me like, and not to be, sexually stereotyped here, but this was like the female's version of like the traditional pickup book or whatever.
Yeah.
Because she definitely writes it more aimed towards women, but she references men, quite a bit and everything else. But it smacks so much of the whole. Think about the goofy, stereotypical how to pick up people type thing, and it's literally a lot of that playbook is in the DNA of this book. And I understand that, because, okay, so I mentioned the scientific stuff. She mentions the fact that, we've done studies and stuff so that, like, when you look at people, depending on the size of your iris, it is something that we sense naturally, but, it's not, it's back of your brain. It's not forebrain. We're not sitting there looking at, how big are Jennifer's pupils when she's looking at us, but it is those things. It is those things that, it's like when you're more interested, your pupils dilate, and when you're not, they shrink. And it's one of those things. She mentioned, she's like, think about other things that is going on so that you will start giving off those tells. And I'm like, okay, so like I said, you can't just throw this book out and say, oh, this is just this woman's idea on how to pick up people. It's got some legitimate basis to it.
But the thing is, like, when it comes to dating, there are so many other variables that play into picking someone up, quote unquote. I mean, you could take this stuff and try it and it could work, or you could go to a bar and find a guy who maybe just went through a terrible breakup, or would have banged you anyways, like, you never know what you're getting. Like, it's kind of subjective in that way to me. And also, like, I don't know, I feel really uncomfortable trying to do things that don't come naturally to me. It feels like I'm forcing myself to look at you longer, or to lean in, or do whatever I wouldn't normally do. And it just, I feel like the guy could tell if I'm not good at it, and I'm faking it, basically. I don't know. Yeah. So I'm not a good actress, and I'm not a good liar. So
two quick things. You said you wanted an excerpt real quick.
Opposites attract. Yet Mom and Dad undoubtedly told you birds of a feather flock together. Sound like contradictions, don't they? Aww. But in the magically insane yet scientifically rational universe of
She is so expressive, though.
She's very expressive. Like I said,
that she's that into her work.
Oh, she totally is. She's into her too. She does mention at the beginning of the book that it is manipulative. You are using this to, not in a malicious way. You're not trying to be deceivious or anything like that, or like with evil intent, but it is a manipulative thing that you're doing.
And the fact that she points out very quickly that this book is how to get someone to date you, how to get someone to fall in love with you. This is not a long-term relationship type thing. And I'm just like, to me, if the same techniques for this were to flow into that, it would be fine. But like you were saying, Jennifer, like, the things that she's asking you to do or telling you to do is just like, this is not a long-term strategy.
No.
One of the things that she talks about, and yes, I understand if someone's talking about something, you need some kind of common interest for things to get sparked, okay? But she literally points out, like, this is like you have found someone that you think meets certain criteria, and this is how you basically trick or start causing domino effect. So let's take this for example. If I had picked out Jennifer and I was single and she was single and I was trying to get this to, according to her, I would need to pick out something that we have as an interest or find something that she's interested in and feign interest in it. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
so you're telling me I would need to go to Jennifer and be like, oh, I'm super into the environment. And then when this relationship starts going places, then it's like, yeah, well, maybe not so much. That is not a good setup for a relationship.
I have had that happen with guys.
Oh, I'm sure it has.
Well, I would date them and they'd be like, yeah, that's so important. And then like 2 or 3 months in, it's like, why aren't you recycling? I don't understand. You said you were all, environmentally conscious. And they're like, well, I've recycled most of my life. I just, right now I don't have the setup for it. I'm like, are you fucking serious? Like, yeah, don't pretend you're into something just to impress someone only for them to find out in a few months that you were faking it. That's worse.
That's way worse. Yes.
Yeah. Like there's a difference between pretending like you are aligned in something and just being interested in learning more.
Right.
I would
Exactly.
If someone ask me about it if they don't know, then pretend like they're all about it when they're not, because I don't do that. I can't do that,
And see, that's why I've never felt like, people are like, go to a bar or whatever to meet people. And I'm like, I'm not a bar person. Why would I go look for someone at a place that I don't plan on going to?
Yeah.
So.
I was trying to remember when I was reading this what I did to attract Ray. Like, what was that thing that hooked him? And I was just like, I didn't do any of that. I literally
jumped at him.
I did. I literally yelled at him and then physically threw myself at him. I was also 16.
Also another strategy I should try, apparently.
Yes, apparently just throw yourself.
Just launch them. Launch yourself at. But I was 16 years old.
Come at you like a spider monkey.
Yeah, that's what I did. He caught me, thank God, or I would have been really embarrassed. But I think she misses the point of what keeps it going is it's chemistry. You can't explain. It's that inexplicable thing that you can't fake. It's just when you have that with somebody, that's what keeps you going. If you have to feign it, if you have to put on a show, if you have to be freaking Jimmy from Magic 2.0 where you're constantly calculating just the right amount of whatever to put out there to create this response, then you're setting yourself up for disaster.
I keep thinking back to the scene. Have y'all both seen the first Jumanji?
Yes.
Not the first Jumanji, but I'm sorry, the reboot, the one with The Rock and stuff.
Yeah.
Number one, I think what's her name is just adorable as all hell. But that scene where Jack Black, he's the girl inside and he's trying to teach her how to flirt. That is so hilarious. And I kept thinking back to that, listening to this. I'm like, you're trying to teach people. So like we talked about eye contact, which yes, I understand, eye contact is just one of those things, though, that you need to work on if you have a hard time looking someone in the eyes.
That kind of goes for any relationship or conversation you're having with someone.
Exactly. It's also just a confidence thing. It's like, confident people look you in the eye when they're talking to you. It's not has nothing to do with trying to pick you up. It's just that's how you are.
It's also a respect thing, I think, too, for a lot of people. Like you're looking straight at.
Can you hear us? You got us, Chris? Can you hear us?
Yes,
Hello?
I do now. Sorry,
okay.
I was there for a second. Hi.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
Oh, we were saying eye contact is something that it doesn't matter whether or not you're trying to pick someone up. That's just like a common thing for talking with people and being confident. Yes. So, yes. But like the fact that she was talking about like holding eye contact for a little bit longer than normal, and I'm just like, that gets into the realm of being creepy.
So somebody like me, I've had to learn how to make eye contact with people because for me it's very intimidating. So I'm not trying to be shifty. I'm not trying to lie to you or stuff. It's just when I'm talking, it's very hard for me to make eye contact with people and hold it. It's even weirder when people won't look away when I'm talking to them. stare at me, and I get really uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, you have to blink, or there's
Like, oh my God, what is that?
I can't.
Yes.
Do I have something on my face? Like, why are you looking at me so
It
intensely?
doesn't come naturally to me either, and I have to remind myself that if I'm constantly looking around, because I get distracted by other people walking by, or
Mhm.
and I'm
Yeah.
not doing it to be rude, but I have to remind myself that it comes off as rude if I'm supposed to be,
Yeah.
you know, zeroing in on that person,
But if
and
you're
so
really-
I consciously try not to do that.
Yeah, but if you're really interested in the person, you don't get distracted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just happens because you want to listen to what they're saying and you want to interact with them, and your energy and their energy are
Right.
drawing each other together. But yeah, so if you're like trying to feign, it was the whole, and then with the guys, I hated the labels for everything. The quarry thing, the hunter and huntress thing, it just was too much.
Well, and here's another thing. Like I don't really like it when men are too overly touchy or lean in and get too
Yeah.
close. Like I know that my love language is not personal touch or physical
Mhm.
touch,
Mhm.
and I understand that is some people's. But if I don't know you and you do that to me, I feel threatened, harassed, uncomfortable, whatever the case is, and that's whether it's a man or a woman. Like anytime I just meet someone and they try to move in a little closer to either show that they're interested, or that's just how they communicate, I'm always like, okay, personal space, no thank you, like the droid in Star Wars.
You need one
I
of
was
those.
gonna say
Like,
you sound like Dio.
Yeah. But that's something she says to do in the book, like,
Mhm.
let your hand linger on their, shoulder, or like, lean in, and I
Mhm.
get that can show you're more interested, but for me personally, that's just not how I do things. So
Yeah, and see, I'm the opposite. I'm very touchy. So I just do it with everybody. Like if I'm talking to you or something, sometimes just I'll touch you, just cause. And I like it too. I like that touch. But again, but it also depends on the person too. So if somebody's giving off like a real creeper vibe, it's like, no, don't touch me.
Yes.
Oh, I'm super uncomfortable now. No, go away. But it's so.
speaking, oh, go ahead.
No, it's their energy. It's all about what you can feel it right away, whether this is going to click or not.
Yeah, it's not something you can force.
Going back real quick to the eyes thing, there's two things I wanted to mention. Number one was the story she brings up about the carpenter. Oh my God.
Which one is this?
So she has the carpenter, and she's like, he's not super attractive, but like I just had this chemistry. I just really felt it with him, and he like really held eye contact. And then I came to find out, oh, he's just not that smart, and it takes him a while to comprehend. And I'm just like, how did you say that?
That's terrible. And then you're gonna tell us to hold eye contact.
Yeah. Well, that's because she was saying she couldn't. She was trying to figure out why she was so drawn to him and because he wasn't that attractive, and what was it about him? And it was because he was stupid and was trying to listen, so he was looking at you for a long time. And I'm just like,
please God, tell me this dude did not listen to this book.
Yeah, names have been changed, so I'm sure they'll never figure out who she's talking about.
Exactly. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is like we said, I look into people's eyes when I talk to them or whatever, but like my natural way when I talk is I tend to look around at stuff. Like if I'm thinking about something, I look away, and I find myself doing that even right now on the Skype camera, talking to y'all. I will look down when I'm thinking about something and then look back at it. That's just, but according to the book, I'd be screwed if I was back in the dating scene. So,
no, I'd be a shut-in. Absolutely not. Never.
Yeah.
Do it.
Always be ready is one of the other things that she's like. And she's like, and she specifically said, don't make sure you're like super dolled up every time you go to the grocery store. But maybe doll yourself up when you go. And I'm just like, oh man, that's a lot of work.
Okay, but listen, I will say on that front, I already live my life that way, because I have been in situations where I will look at my work calendar and be like, I'm going to be in the office all day. I don't need to, wear my cute outfit or get extra done up. And then lo and behold, someone will show up for a meeting, or, and I'll meet someone that's kind of a prospect, and then I'll be like, oh, fuck, I didn't not that like my looks are the only thing I have to offer, but you're more confident when you're like at your best. So I will say I kind of try to do that anytime I go out with the potential to meet anyone, just because me personally, I'm on the lookout. I'm always like, they could be anywhere. They could show up,
Right,
like
exactly.
the UPS delivery guy, even though I never see them, could be the one. I don't know.
Yeah.
And see, since I'm not in that mode anymore, I'm just like, fuck, if they would let me wear like jeans and a t-shirt every day, I would be there.
Oh yeah, I just recently bought work clothes because I didn't have to. So my go-to uniform was what is the comfiest pant that I could find, and my
Hey,
comfiest
that's
t-shirt.
important.
It is important, and I love Crocs, and I don't care. They're comfortable.
no.
They're easy to put on. I will wear them. I've been Croc shamed by Ray. I don't freaking care. I will. I have a good
Ray's
friend.
right. Don't wear them.
Oh yeah, no. I know
They're
he's right.
awful.
He took a picture of it, stuck it on Instagram, and everybody agreed with him. I'm like, I don't freaking care. They're comfortable. Where are you gonna go? We're married. You gonna leave me to wear Crocs?
You're gonna leave me for Crocs.
Like, I don't care. I have a friend who won't walk near me. She'll walk ahead of me if I'm wearing my Crocs.
My mom has them in every color. I hate
They're
them.
comfy, and sometimes my back hurts, so I need to wear them.
Well, that inevitable law of the universe where if you dress like shit and go to Walmart, you'll run into everybody you know.
Mm-hmm.
That has happened to me after the gym or just running for whatever, and then I'll see a cute guy and I'll be like, yep, this is why you don't go places like this. Cause
Now, I will say, like, if I go somewhere, I'll be like, if I'm wearing like basketball shorts, I'm not basketball shorts out in public guy.
Mm-hmm.
Around the house, they're perfectly fine. But like, if I'm going somewhere, I'll at least put on a different pair of shorts or like jeans or whatever. And like, it's killing me right now because like we're going to soccer practices, and I'm like, I'll put my jeans on, and the cold air is just cutting through them, and I'm like, why did you not put on your sweatpants? You're married. No one cares. No one's looking at you. They're fucking warm. Just wear them, doofus.
Yeah.
So
that's my mentality. I'm like, who's fucking looking at this? I'm not putting my energy out. Yeah. I look like a hobo on purpose. This isn't like
what you get right here, baby. This is it. This is the real deal. Yeah.
Like he's tied up. Like there's no way he's going anywhere. So I can look.
Your lucky spouses.
Look however I want. But it is nice to get dressed up. I will say that. So it is nice to put on the nice sweater to feel pretty. So there is something to that too, because it does give you a little bit of confidence. But I do not have that kind of energy. I don't even wear makeup to work. I can't even imagine that. But I do know a lot of women, even moms, who will do the total face in the zhuzh just to pick their kids up from school.
Mm-hmm.
No.
It's a lot, but they enjoy it and they do it, and that's their thing.
And if that's your thing, that's your thing. Like there's she was the art teacher at the middle school I used to work at, and she always did everything and always wore heels. And I'm just like, doesn't that kill you? She goes, actually, I have adjusted my body to the fact that like when I wear like tennis shoes, it kills my feet because my feet are normally used to being. And I'm just like, well, that's you. That's cool. So yeah, I understand that. Be you, but yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that she does bring up in the book and I'm so glad the science backed up on this. Hard to get doesn't work. We keep hearing that, and like I said, that is one of those things. It's one of the things in the book that you want to look at it and you want to just go, this is all like old and
malarkey.
Nonsense. Exactly, that's a good word for it. Malarkey.
That's a great word.
In the words of our friend Joe.
Yeah, you can't just dismiss it all. And this is one of those things. It's like, she talks about how, they're like, oh yeah, if a woman's hard to get, that means, she must be a real catch or whatever. And then they did this, study, and they're like, no, obviously not. You don't want to put any effort into that. And so I am glad that that was in there and it made sense, as it were. So
I haven't gotten that far, but I don't think. But I am never a fan of the playing hard to get thing. Like, as on either end. No. People tell me sometimes, oh, you can't respond too quick, or oh, you've gotta, like make them work for it. And I'm like, no, if I like someone, I'm gonna let them know. I'm gonna make myself available, not too available, but like I'm going to make time for them, and I'm going to like, put it out there that I'm interested in you. Let's get together. I don't want to waste time. I don't like playing games. I don't have the energy for that shit. And it's to me, it's like lying. It's like I'm just having to think of things. Plus I'm impatient and I'm just not good at it. But I don't like it when guys do that to me, though. If I'm interested in you and then you act like you're not, then okay, move on. Like, thank you, next. I've been through that too many times.
It's a turn off.
Yeah,
It's
to
like-
me,
it's a
it
turn
would
off.
signal, it signals, oh, you don't have time for a relationship. You don't
You're
have
not
time for
interested.
this. Which, if that's
You're
the
just laying
case,
the field,
that's fine. If work and everything else you've got going on is too much to keep a relationship, then this one's gonna happen anyway. So, one of the other she brings up, first dates should be emotionally charged. Now, and I've heard this before. This is kind of I hear a lot of newer things. So other books and stuff that we've read, talk about the first date shouldn't be something like just a movie or whatever. It should have some kind of emotional charge, which is funny because one of the examples she brings up is like going to watch a movie that's like maybe a horror film or something or something like that. And I'm just like, I'm thinking horror movie for
the classical arm around the girl when she's scared, and then you move your arm down, your hand down.
I'm thinking if you're taking a girl to a horror movie, you've both had a conversation or you met someplace that's like, dude, you like Freddy Krueger? Me too. Let's go watch this slasher movie together and laugh or whatever. That type of, if that's your deal, cool. But I'm just like, no.
I don't want to go to those. I don't like those movies. And if somebody were to suggest, let's go to a horror movie, I'd be like, who are you going with? Because it's not me. I'm not going.
You want to see my anxiety go through the roof?
Yeah, you want me to like scream and cry and then run out of the movie theater and make a scene? I'll totally do that.
Now, if it's a Marvel movie,
I'm in. I'll stay.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, hell, that could definitely be an emotionally charged thing.
That's true. Do you want to see me cry? Because you're going to see me cry.
Exactly.
Ugly cry.
Yeah. But mine and Ray's first date was a movie at a friend's house. We watched Ed TV with a bunch of friends.
Oh, I remember that.
And he rubbed my feet. That's what we did for the first, because there was like 4 or 5 of us in the basement of our friend's house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we watched. And then our first date sort of outside without friends, just the 2 of us, was to go see The Green Mile at the movie theater.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we've been together for a long time. But that's what we did. And it was fun. And we've gone to the drive-in. And then once we did all the Lord of the Rings movies as dates, and that's what we did in college, was go to the movie theaters. They're the best dates, I think, because then when you're done, you have stuff to talk about.
And see, I've always liked the idea of the movie and then dinner, if possible. Mm-hmm. Mainly for that thing. You go watch the movie. Yes, you're not talking with each other, but then it gives you something to talk about and gives you a common ground to go from. But and she says, and I can understand, especially with people who are younger than myself, but because right now I'm just like, oh my God, if I were in the dating scene and the girl was like, let's go skydiving or let's go I'd be like, no.
That's me.
That's you. Hi.
That's me. I am all about the experiential date. I know that's surprising, right? But I want to be like doing something, having an adventure. I mean, I like doing the dinner and a movie thing too. But I want to get to know someone in all sorts of different situations. I want to see how they react under pressure. I want to see if when we go on a hike and get lost, they lose their fucking mind like the guy that I went on a hike with last year and lost his mind, even though he was, great at hiking and reading maps.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And instead of like, oh, this is an adventure, it's fun, we'll figure this out, he started flipping out and like, I never get lost, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see those parts of them that I couldn't just see from talking at a dinner table,
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of do agree with her, like, let's make, different emotions happen, but didn't she say like, let's almost make it like a life or death feeling at some points? Like
a little bit, yes.
I don't know how early we want to get into that.
That definitely seems a little further down the road.
Yeah.
So
does that make a person feel more attracted to you in that life? And again, there's like simulating that attraction that's not really there in real situations. So
I don't know if Chris agrees with this.
No, well, I'm a high-strung person when it comes to stuff like that, and it would be a lot of crying. Like we went whitewater rafting with friends, like this was years ago, and I hated it. I absolutely hated it, because for me, I was scared the whole time, because everybody in my freaking raft, all they wanted to do was tip. They wanted to tip. And I'm like, I don't want to, can't we just go down this stupid river? I love canoeing. I love kayaking. Can't we just make it down without dumping ourselves on purpose in this really fast flowing rapid? This is not fun. Ray had a blast. He thought it was freaking awesome. He wanted to do it again. I'm like, I love you. You can go without me. I don't want to do this. This is not fun for me to experience stuff like that. Hiking, get lost. That's fine. Let's just backtrack. We're good. I'd be fine. But like whitewater rafting, skydiving, things like that where I'm scared, I don't like doing. And it's not. I will cry, and I'll ruin it. I'll absolutely ruin it. I'll do it. Like, just leave me here. I did. One time I did. We did the girls in one raft, the guys in the other raft, and the girls were like, let's keep tipping. Let's keep tipping. I'm like, put me on the rock, pick me up when you're done. And they did. And I watched them, and I'm like, this is great. Because I was done. I just didn't want to tip anymore. I was getting too scared. Because I was afraid I wasn't going to come back up, even though I was wearing a life jacket, and that's physically impossible. But I was just like, no.
Doesn't matter. Yep.
This is not meant for whitewater rafting.
One of the things he brings up now, okay, so we're really going to get into the depth of change here. You know, and it goes, and it going back to, you know, how you're dressed and everything. And it, you know, she says, like, you know, technically, you know, the guy should be worried about how, or not worried, but concerned, think about what he's wearing or whatever. And when she gets to a point and she literally tells the women, ladies, he's going to mentally undress you anyway. So, and I'm just like, what? Boy, this is 1996.
But
Definitely.
She makes it seem like women are above that. Like women don't do it too. Like, oh yeah, because I'm not looking at that guy thinking 6 ways of Sunday that I can undress him too. Like women do that too.
Exactly, and that's what I'm saying. That's one of the. It's where that was one of those hard lines where it's very sexually stereotypical.
Yeah.
It's very much, you know. The women know how to talk, because she even mentioned, one of the other things she mentions was, you know, guys, I know talking about feelings is really hard, and I'm just like, no, not really. No. And I don't mentally undress every woman I meet. Like,
toxic masculinity was really, I mean, it still is, but more pervasive in the 90s.
Yes, I mean, I could understand back then, absolutely. What's funny is like Christy right now, we don't have anything to watch together, so she's going back and watching old stuff, and she started rewatching Designing Women.
Okay.
And I'm just like, wow, boy, things have really changed, because the rape scene in one of the episodes, you know, there's a lot of humor to it, and I'm just like, this ain't cool. Like, there's people should not be laughing at this point.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
You'd
so
be watching
I mean,
Golden Girls.
Oh,
they were much more progressive with some of those topics.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they flat just laid it down at some point. So, but yeah, that was one of those things that, you know, came through, that I'm just sitting there listening to it, and I'm just like, if I wasn't taking this with a grain of salt and really kind of laughing as it's going through, as being, I would have honestly been offended. I would have been like, seriously, like. Yeah, I'm sure there are still dudes out there like this, and yes, you're right, Jennifer. It was probably a lot more, you know, out there and, you know, more common back then. But it's just like, come on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I took that as, so he's gonna mentally undress you anyway. So dress
revealing anyway.
Yeah, just have the girls out.
Like, make it easy on him.
Make it easy on him. It's like, that's terrible advice.
Yeah.
No.
But once again, remember, we're shooting for the date, and we're shooting for them to fall in love. This is not long term. So, you know, whatever, I guess.
But that's the thing, that's such a piss off, that it's like, I need to fall in love. You're not going to fall in love in the first couple of dates. It takes a long ass time to really love somebody. So the whole thing that you could, like, it's a gimmick that you could make anybody fall in love with you. It's like, no, you can't. And love that you want takes a really long time, and lust and love can sometimes look like each other. So when you're at that initial, it's lust. You're not thinking about love. You're just thinking about how can I jump your bones.
I wonder how things have changed, with this woman as time's gone by.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder if you could go back in time and present the idea of her, very common idea nowadays of marry, someone you're friends with, how she would react to that. Like, what I'm saying? Like, that kind of goes against the whole thing. Like, because if you're friends, you're just like, oh, well, who cares? He can see me at my worst, and I've seen him at his worst, and we're friends, and everything else. And like, I'm not actively pursuing this other person. And I don't know. Do you think that would fit in with her ideology, or do you think it would throw a wrench into it?
Marrying someone you're friends with? Is that what you said?
Yes. I guess I got kind of digitized or whatever. So.
Like marrying them because you don't have any other prospects, or like because you're in love with them?
Like a lot of people say marry your best friend. Like, I know people who are like, my best friend is my wife and or husband. And and do you think that goes against what she's saying here, or do you think it fits in? Or
I don't think she ever touched on that. Well, Ray and I are best friends. It just happened to work out that way, though. Like, it's not, we were friends before we started dating, so we already had that beforehand.
Right.
So now I think if you're like, again, it takes, when you're friends, it's a cumulative relationship, so you're already kind of there anyway. You just have to take that next step if you're attracted to that other person. Like, Ray and I joke that if we didn't date, we'd be friends who were secretly in love with each other. Because we have a really good friendship. We get along really well. We just have that added bonus of that attraction part. But
right.
But I don't know. I don't think it would fit, because a friendship is such a different thing than trying to get somebody to.
I think you have to be friends with whoever you're
yes
you, right? I mean, I don't know how you could be in a relationship without being friends, or you don't have to be best friends, but just like having that bond.
Like the other person.
Yeah.
You have to like them.
Yeah.
As well as love them. But I don't know if friendship would be.
I don't think she would touch on it at all, because we're talking about long-term relationship here, and we have to go back to the first thing she said. This is not about long-term relationships. No. This is about getting a first date or whatever. So
this is just getting your foot in the door.
Yeah. What did you think about, now, Jen, you may not have gotten to the point, because it was definitely later in the book, about the sexual interrogation.
I did not get to that.
Putting air quotes around it. As she puts it, it's important, but it's for later. And I'm just like, this is one of those things that's very hard-lined nowadays.
Explain.
Because it's like, so you may not necessarily be into everything that the other person is, but be open and maybe give it a shot. And
you mean sexually?
Yes. And I'm just like, not today. Now, today, that's like one of the first things that needs to come up. Like, hey, listen.
Yeah. Yes.
You want to do butt stuff, or?
Yeah.
Listen, so do you, this is what I'm into. If you're not into it, that's fine. But we need to have some hard line, it's funny that, it's become so prolific, and it's become like one of those, like I said, it's one of those things that, like, my understanding is it kind of comes up pretty early in the relationship, and she literally pushes it. Oh no, just kind of push it back there. And like I said, it's one of those things that it's very clear to see this was not written any time recently. This is definitely older.
You need to talk, I don't know how, if it came up organically in the conversation, talk about sex, but like, you can't just be like, okay, now let's talk about sex, and here are all my kinks, and here's my safe word, and what do you think? Like, I don't think you should lay that like right out there at the beginning, right. But like, if it's starting to go that way and you're starting to feel that, then you got to bring it up. You can't just like put it off until you're like in bed with the person.
Yeah. By
the way, fun story. Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying you should carry around your contract with you at all times, just in case. But
but if it comes up, then like there's this one show. It's an awful show, but it's fantastic. It's called Love Is Blind, and it's on Netflix.
I was just gonna bring that up.
So there's this one couple, they didn't make it past a certain point because the guy hid his sexuality. He hid it from her. And when he finally told her, after all of this conversations, after they got engaged, it's really terrible. After all of that, then he decides to tell her about his sexual orientation. It's like, she's like, oh, okay, you're going to have to give me a second because now I feel like I don't know you. Why wouldn't you have just told me about that at the beginning when we were talking? Because we were talking about everything. Why didn't you just say, I am bisexual. I have been with both men and women. And just so you know, that's me. Because it doesn't mean she would have shunned you or turned away, but you have given her the choice to be like, okay, do I want to continue with somebody? Am I comfortable with somebody who has had a relationship with both genders? If not, then I can back out. But he didn't give her a choice. Right. And then he got mad at her, freaked out, called her a bitch. Then she threw the drink in the face and they left. It was
That's not cool.
No, it wasn't cool that he did that to her at all. Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say my friend told me about this show, and the concept is like I haven't watched it, but these two people meet without seeing each other and talk for a while, right? And then if they get to the point where they fall in love and they want to propose, then they get to meet face to face and do whatever.
This is all within the span of 10 days, though. This is days. Days, and then they go, if they propose, then they go on a vacation to Mexico together for 5 days. Then if they make it through that, then they live together for another 3 weeks, then they get married. Like it's a span of that's what the thing is. So if you're going into this being like, okay, I want to find love, then you do lay all your cards out. You talk about sex, you talk about everything because you're trying to get to that spot with that person, and to hide such a huge part of yourself is not, that's not good.
A lot of problems with this setup, but not least of which for me is, I mean, the first thing I thought when I heard this was, I'm never going to get to the point where I want to get engaged with someone unless I have slept with them. And you know, you see if you're compatible, if you're even attracted to them. I mean, it is a part of falling in love, like the physical attraction to someone. And I don't just mean like their face or their body, but like, you know, your physical chemistry together. So there's no way I could ever fall in love like to that point where I'd be like, yeah, I'd want to marry someone, you know.
It's a train wreck of a show.
You can't even test it. And not only that, but like if you're just talking on these dates and you're not actually doing other things, like I said, I want to have other experiences, not just talk for 10 days or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh no, one couple, it was 5 days and then they got engaged.
Yep.
It was super. It's quite the experiment, and it's a train wreck you cannot look away from. And tomorrow is the weddings.
Oh Lord.
Yes.
Plural weddings.
Weddings. Somebody leaves. Somebody runs away in a wedding dress. It's amazing. I can't wait to watch it. It's terrible.
It's trash TV. I understand. It's all right.
Yeah. I don't watch The Bachelor. This is my Bachelor.
It's so funny. I was literally just about to bring up this show I heard about.
Yeah.
What is on that?
Yeah.
She one of the other notes that I put on there that she was talking about also, you know, she goes through and she's talking about men versus women porn. And yeah, it's just like, oh God, it was so funny listening because once again, with the way that she's reading this book, it's all I can picture is just her sitting around with her girlfriends, just like, you know, she's just you know, telling them out like it is, and I'm just like, oh,
she
okay.
Makes men sound like walking boners.
Yes, basically.
Makes them sound like, and women are just these like people who are just like, we only like to watch romantic, sensual porn. I'm like, you have not talked to many women.
Sandra
exactly.
Yeah.
All innocent, and it's all full of love. I'm like, I like reading romance novels, but if they don't have sex within like the first 100 pages, you've lost me.
Right. Get to the good stuff, lady.
Yeah, come on.
We're delicate flowers, Chris.
Oh, I know. We're the weaker sex. Gosh.
Yeah.
Can't
So yeah, and like I said, that's honestly all the notes that I took on this thing. It's just there were certain things that kind of stood out that I was like, okay, I wanted to discuss these, but most of it is just like, well, I mean, even though we talked about the eye contact, a lot of it's just like common sense. Like, yes, you need to. Well, we talked about smiling more.
Yeah.
And we talked about that kind of in the chat or whatever. I'm like, Jen was saying, she didn't get all the way through it, and I'm like, here's the broad strokes. Smile more, look at people, maybe pretend you're interested. I don't suggest that, but that's what she says, literally. But I'm like, the smiling more, and I brought this up, like I don't smile. Like, my normal facial feature is not to smile. So when I'm in a situation like working a booth at a con or doing a parade or whatever, I will smile naturally a lot because I'm having fun. But I do have to constantly keep referring in my brain, you're walking, I know you're tired, it's getting close to the end of the parade, but there's still kids out there and they're waving. Damn it, smile and wave and keep, try to keep that energy up. So I understand that part, but like, yeah, just a lot of it's just common type sense. And here, let me ask you this: do y'all think this was a revolutionary book when it came out in 1996, or?
No, this reminds me of when all the books like The Rules came out, and
Right.
And all of that sort of thing, where it put women and men in very distinctive gender stereotype roles, like men like this from a woman, and yeah, that kind of thing. Where like men only like this and women only like this, and you have to do this to get to this point in a relationship, and this is your end. Like, The Rules was more about getting married than about getting to the first date. But I don't think it was. I'd never heard of it before you told us. Like,
I had neither. And Jen, you actually just brought up a book that I think is a very interesting counterpoint. I think didn't Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus come out about this time, or at least
I think it did, and I never read it, but
okay,
it
here's
seems
the thing.
like it would be the same kind of
It's
stuff.
not, though. He does specifically say, he said, now I am going to stereotype women this way and men this way, but that is not always the case. And please understand, if I'm describing a woman as being more emotional, that tends to be the way in the relationship, but that is not always the case. You're going to have cases where the man's going to be more emotional than the woman. And he specifically, and I think one of the reasons why that book has actually still been so popular even to this day, because he was forethinking enough to think, just because maybe that's the way it is now, it's not necessarily going to be the case. Whereas this book did not hold up well.
It did not age well. No. And I would have a hard time thinking it would be any, because I remember books like that getting criticized in mainstream media, being like, this is very 1950s way of thinking. We need to do better.
Yes.
So I will say, yeah, the 25 years ago, the whole like gender continuum was pretty much male and female, right?
Right.
But you were starting to see more and more people coming out as on the LGBT spectrum, or trans, or whatever, they identified as something different from what they were physically born as. And I think in the last 25 years, we've seen such a progression in that, in the understanding of that, and in the acceptance of that, anything that kind of separates people into distinctly male and distinctly female is kind of seen as laughable now, because one, we know that there's more than just these two genders. There's people who identify as more of one or the other, but also, like, gender in that construct is very socially contrived. Like, what we think of as masculine and feminine in our culture may be the opposite in another culture, and they're not distinctive to the physical makeup of a person. It's kind of what society has told you. You need to be, you're a girl, you need to wear pink and dresses and like putting makeup on and curling your hair, blah, blah, blah. But men, you can't show emotion. And like, that's not the case anymore. We're understanding that, like, yeah, people are more complex than that. People can have feelings on both sides, and they can, change, and they don't have to be what they were born as. And that's a great thing, I think. And books like this kind of, are even more dated because of the advances in that line of thought.
Absolutely. I agree. I mean, because even in 1996, like, the idea of like a man staying home to raise the kids was still like out
See.
there. I mean, it's only a decade removed from Mr. Mom. Mr. Mom is still a funny movie,
Mhm.
but like half of the humor is lost now. It's like, oh hey, look, the dude stayed home and the wife's making all the money or whatever, and it's just now it'd be like, yeah, and
Mhm.
Y'all are bringing up some throwback movies.
oh yeah. Well, Michael Keaton's fucking awesome in that movie,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah.
you know, it's just, you know, it's still laughable to look at because he doesn't know how to do the housework and stuff. That
Mhm.
could still be humorous, but the whole premise of the dad is staying home and doing the mom work or whatever is just like whatever. Like honestly, like, and Christy and I've had this conversation multiple times. If one of us had been the stay-at-home the parent, it would have been me because she would have lost her mind. Like she could not have handled it, and I would have been like, "Sure, I'll get up, take care of the kids."
Even like
and the
so
house."
much more time to do all these activities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't work out that way. You end up spending all of your time working with the kids and everything. So
We talked about that too. Like when we were pregnant with Logan, it was like who made the most money, and can we swing it with one parent at home? It just worked out that I didn't need to work. I worked at the grocery store. There was no point, and Ray had a really great paying job, so he went to work. If the roles reversed, he would have been rocking that stay-at-home dad thing. Oh yeah, the kids would have been in every freaking group. He would have been volunteering at the school. He would know everybody's names. We'd eat like shit, and the house would look terrible, but we'd all be happy. Like it was,
Yeah.
just, it's different than,
Yeah.
and he would love it. He'd embrace it, and it would be more time to do activities. He'd be out everywhere. There'd be like,
yep.
yeah, he'd embrace it too. It just happened to work out that I stayed at home. So yeah.
Well, overall, would you recommend this book to anyone? Boy, that face if you're not watching the video version of this show, you should be watching the video version of this show because that face that Chris just made was awesome.
My face.
I wish I could see it. Still
No,
can't see it.
I would, if you're looking at sort of how society has changed over the decades and how we've progressed socially, then yes, as a sort of hallmark of
Commentary on
Yeah. then I would say,
historical.
read it because look how far we've come. But
Right.
like for actual legit, no, don't read.
No.
No, thank you.
What's funny is I just reread Dracula or just
Okay.
re-listened to Dracula, and he specifically talks about how Mina Harper, her mind is a man's mind because of the way it, and I'm just like, well, of course, of the time that this was written,
Yes.
you know, but I'm just like, man, you compare and contrast, and that book was written a really long time ago, so I understand it. This book was only written, like Jen said, like 25 years ago, and it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want a really dated story, I started listening to The Curious Case of Benjamin Button because I was like, oh, this was a short story. How does it compare to the movie? Oh my God, like awful,
Really?
awful. The way they're talked about and just like overlooked and yeah.
Wow.
I'm glad they did the movie the way they did. It's completely
Nice.
different. But yeah, it's funny when you go back and read old stuff. It's like,
Mhm.
ooh,
Yes, it is.
we don't use that word anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
even Logan, stuff that we grew up with, and she'll listen to it, and they'll use certain words, and she's just like, oh, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it wasn't bad then.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's just how it was.
That's how it was, yeah. But it's better
Yeah.
now.
Certain comedians would not have a job today. If,
No.
Eddie Murphy would not have a job.
Who?
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy, yeah.
There's no
Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brooks wouldn't have gotten away with half
No.
of the stuff that he did. And you know what? I almost
Half
wonder
of
if maybe
SNL.
that's. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, SNL's still kind of pushing it in some cases, but they've also stepped out of boundaries quite a few times. And it's like, all right, well, that kind of makes up for it. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, Jen, would you recommend this book to anyone?
Probably not.
All right.
Considering I can't even apply it to my own life very well. Yeah. I just don't think dating is something you can learn. Like, maybe you can learn how to date better. I shouldn't say that, but like falling in love and finding a relationship isn't something you can really teach unless the person is just like blatantly abusive or neglectful or something. But like if you're just trying to find someone and like make a connection, you can't make that happen. Like Chris said, it's all chemistry, and you kind of have to just meet the person and see how you jive, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Of course, I say that as a person who met my wife on the internet and basically just talked to her for several months in a row and was already in love by the time I actually met her in
that's
person.
crazy, man.
I know, because everyone on the internet's a serial killer. So.
True that.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend the book. It's the very fact that, like I said, it starts off saying this is how you get someone to date you, not long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Was just immediate. Like I was like, had Jennifer not recommended this book for us to read as a group,
Mm-hmm.
I would have just been like, nope,
Yep.
done,
I agree.
return.
Mhm.
Not that I necessarily would have read it, in any other context, but it just like I'm like no. But I'm glad we did read it just because it was fun to go back and look at. So
as a contrast, a relationship type book I would recommend, and actually one maybe we should consider for next February, is what I mentioned earlier, the 5 love languages, because I think that is a really like useful kind of roadmap for.
I totally agree. I think that would be an excellent one to read.
Yeah, not just romantic relationships, but your friendships, your family. Like, it actually gives you a really good, oh wow, that's why they get mad when I do this, or that's why they react a certain way, because that's their love language. And it was enlightening for me, because I was like, okay, I know this about myself now. Like, I know what's important to me and why I get so angry when I don't hear from someone, or when they break dates with me, because quality time is one of my love languages. So I think that's a good book for us to consider at some point.
I agree. I think that would be a good one to look at maybe for February of next year as we continue us on. So, well, I guess let's go ahead and wrap that up and move on to has anyone been reading anything else?
Yeah, I have been.
What you been reading?
It's this. So as my New Year's resolution to read all the books we have before I buy anything new. Ray bought this, I don't know how long ago. It's the same author that wrote the Skin Map that I read a little while ago. It's Stephen R. Lawhead, and it's called Taliesin, right up there. And it is book 1 of the Pendragon cycle. There's 5 books in total, but this book was written in, I think, like 80 something. 87. So it was written in 87. So all the books are out. It's fantasy. I've never read like an actual true fantasy. I tried reading Lord of the Rings. I think I got 2 chapters in and had to stop.
That's tough.
I was also 16. I could
try
probably
it again.
Yeah, I could probably try again. We have the books here. But so it's high fantasy. It's high fantasy. It's really interesting because it's 2 different points of view. A girl named Karis and sort of another side to the story in another place in the world that Stephen R. Lawhead's building. And so it takes place in England, Roman England, and then the city of Atlantis, like the kingdom of Atlantis. So it goes back and forth with that. And it's the most fantasy book I ever read, and it's really interesting, just the worlds that he's created. And it's not like fast paced or anything like that, but it's like really deep, and it's cool. And I think I'll suggest it when I'm done this. I'll suggest it for the next book, but it's going to take a while because I'm only halfway through it, and I think there's like almost 500 pages. But yeah, so it's all the books are. I want to read more of them because it's an interesting saga for sure, I think. Yeah, I like it. It's what's to say? Oh, it says the story of the incomparable love that created the miracles of Merlin and Arthur the King. So this is the start, I'm guessing. Yeah.
Wow.
What about you, Jen? Have you been reading anything else?
Yeah, so I read Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson. And that's one I think I had started a long time ago, and then my Planeteers book club decided to read it, so I finally finished it. And it was a real quick read. It's only like 3 or 4 hours, and he narrates it.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked it. I mean, it was kind of science heavy, but it was the high level stuff. He didn't get too into the weeds, so I was still slightly confused, but not as bad as other similar books. And I'm into that, nerdy shit anyways. And then I've also been listening to the National Parks. I think it's just called National Parks by Ken Burns and someone else. I'm like maybe halfway through it, and it's really good. It's very long. It's, like 16 hours or something of listening, but they go into like the history of the national park system, how it started, the role that all these people played. So John Muir is featured pretty heavily, Theodore Roosevelt, and a lot of the key, legislators and just activists throughout the years who have kind of made these parks come to life. And it's fascinating to hear about how like just a few people, key people, pushing for this change and sometimes buying the land and donating it to the government and insisting that it be like protected and kept in perpetuity. It's really cool, because I'm into nature and conservation and stuff. So I'm just like loving it. And at the same time, it's making me sad because, we're seeing so many of our parks being dismantled and kind of invaded by, predatory businesses, and the government shutdowns the last few years have really made an impact on some of the more fragile ecosystems, and it's really sad. So, but it's making me really want to like go visit every park now as I'm hearing about them, and
that's
even
cool.
more than I already did. So definitely recommend if you're into history, conservation, or just nature in general. Very good read.
Good deal. I actually did. I can't remember if I had already read the first two when we last convened. I actually finished all 3 books in the Star Wars Aftermath trilogy, which is actually our next book that we're going to be reading. We'll talk about that here in a second. I enjoyed it. It definitely fills in information as to stuff that happened between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So you get an idea of what was happening with the Empire after the fall of the Emperor. So
how did we get the First Order and all that shit?
Yes, it starts leading into that. So and then the other book that I read, because I had 2 credits for both months, I read Stephen King's Bag of Bones. It's one of his older books. It was an interesting book.
It's an older book, but it still checks out.
Yeah, it's it's Stephen King. It's it starts off as a pretty normal setup, and then either something, usually something supernatural happens, and then it's the investigation into that. So I was just kind of in a King mood and thought, it had pretty decent rating. So I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and listen to this one, because like I said, it was one of those ones that when it came out, everyone really seemed to like it. So
I've liked Stephen King books that aren't like blatantly horror, more of like thrillers. So I bet I wouldn't mind reading one of his books, because I've never actually read the books, as maybe one of our books for this, to like see how they hold up against the movies and time, I guess. He's been around a while.
If y'all are open to reading a Stephen King, man,
if Chris and I's anxiety can handle it.
One of my favorite ones is Salem's Lot. And it's basically his idea. What if Dracula was when he writes it in modern time, but we're talking like 1980s, I think, maybe, or even 60s. And it's, the premise is if Dracula were to have come to America and, just set up shop in this little New England town, what would happen? And now here's the thing. Even though everyone says Stephen King's a horror writer, he's only ever read or written 2 things that ever like creeped me out. And it's 2 specific scenes. One of them is in The Dark Tower, the last book of The Dark Tower, and one of them is the short story The Mist. There's something about both the short story The Mist and the movie they made of it that just is unsettling as all hell to me. And I don't know why that is, but So I don't ever whenever people talk about him being a horror, it's like, it's not really that scary. It's a book. So, but anyway, well, if y'all are open to that, we may have to suggest that sometime. So.
Yeah, if it's anything like What We Do in the Shadows, I'm totally.
No, not quite. I cannot. I have got.
I know, but
I have got to read, or I've got to watch that. I've heard nothing but good.
Okay, I've seen the movie. I haven't seen the show, which I hear is good, but not the same people. Yeah. But yeah, the movie was fucking hilarious.
I've got to watch it.
If you like Taika Waititi and Jermaine and those guys, like, New Zealand humor, it's
yeah, it's on my to-do list because I keep hearing good things about it. So, well, like I just mentioned a moment ago, our next book series, we decided we were going to do the Star Wars Aftermath trilogy. So that will actually be our next 3 books in the series. So
hope you like Star Wars.
Hope you like Star Wars. Yeah, they're fun, and if you listen to them on Audible, it's even better because there's sound effects, there's different voices, there's music. Like it's almost more of like an audio play than just listening to a book being read. And they're fantastic. The voice acting is pretty good. Yeah, it's enjoyable, and there's quite a bit of Leia and Han and Chewie. So, you definitely got some characters that we all love to grasp onto and to follow.
Who does their voices?
Okay, so it's read by one guy in particular, but there are definitely other people who are kicking in and doing voices as well. Because whenever it's Chewie, it sounds like Chewie from the movies. So it's good. So
and if they just reused footage of him, we really wouldn't know because it's Wookiee language.
Exactly. Yeah, they could just keep repeating the same thing. Which is funny though.
Pull it from different scenes.
When there are different Wookiees, it does change. So it's a different Wookiee that's growling and grunting and stuff. So.
Like Carrie. Oh.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, but I enjoyed them, and I think the group will enjoy them too. So, and who knows if we get through the first one, everyone's like, I can't do this, then we may jump ship. But right now we're gonna give it a shot. So, we shall see. With that being said, if you would please give us a 5-star rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Music. You can find us on pretty much anywhere that you can find podcasts. Our new show has actually already gone live by the time that you are listening to this. Creatively Geeky, you should be able to find it on all of those different platforms, as well as the other shows, Epically Geeky and Sustainably Geeky. Still not another episode of Procrastinators, but we're living that name up. So
how many have you done for that? 2?
2. We have done 2.
We will started in.
I think we started in 2019. So let me put
broad answer.
We will probably outpace it with the Creatively Geeky shows very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. Like it's going to get lapped very quickly. So, but yeah, so definitely go check out all the different shows and everything. And as always, you can find us at Epically Geeky on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Where can we find you online, Jennifer?
I am here on Marginally Geeky, Creatively Geeky, Epically Geeky, and of course, Sustainably Geeky, the one that I host with Chris and Jen. And we just had a great episode about fast fashion. And next month we'll be talking about green building. And so we have a lot of good topics lined up for the next few months. I'm really excited. So look for us on all your podcast places. And I'm also on social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Het's Gonna Be Me.
I am happy to report that y'all do not have to worry about me contributing to the fast fashion because I like get a new shirt every year or so for work, and it's just
wear it forever.
I'm sure. I mean, it was clean and good working order, and it's just I'm sure people are just like, oh, that shirt again, if they're even paying attention to me. Mm-hmm. But you know what? Who cares? It's my job.
You're not trying to impress anyone, Eugene. You're taken.
Nope, not trying to trying to impress anyone. And if anyone says shit, I'll be like, I'm trying to save the environment, fucker.
That's why I'm
When
wearing
was
my
la-
Ghostbusters costume again.
That's right. Hell yeah. They hold up. Chris, where can we find you online?
You can find me here, Marginally Geeky, Epically Geeky, Creatively Geeky, and Sustainably Geeky with Jen. And Jen.
And Jen.
And my daughter was on the last episode, the fast fashion one. She was. She doesn't remember asking to be on it. She's like, you made me. Anyway, you asked. Anyway, so it was a little bit.
Logan is always welcome on the show.
She did. She learned some stuff, which was nice.
Good.
I'm glad to have her here. Get to hear her on it. So.
Yeah, she doesn't say much. She mostly complained her back hurt because sitting on her bed. But she did learn something about a couple of her brands that she does like, because she's 14 and is very big into brands right now. Mm-hmm. And then I'm on Instagram at the Burrow Life with the.burrow.life, and it's.
And as always, you can find my individual wacky adventure on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Optimus Gene. For everyone on the site, have a good night.